Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cohesion Podcast. Today we're joined by Shaun Randol, founder of Mister Editorial and editor-in-chief of digital publications at Lamb Research. Shaun has nearly 15 years of experience in mixternal communications for multi-billion-dollar global corporations, including Bloomberg, BlackRock, and Splunk. Shaun, welcome back to the show.
Shaun, thanks for having me.
Right on.
This may be the longest conversation I've ever had with someone who shares my name.
Oh,
so this should be fun.
This will be it. Well, this is the second time you've been on the podcast. Like, you joined us last year, July 2023, and talked about AI then. We'll talk about that again today. From ethical concerns to tools, possible use cases. Now, before we get into it, I have some quick personal-ish questions to get to know you better. And the listeners who have probably heard the podcast episode, and if you haven't, back in July 2023, these are probably more for me to get to know you a little bit better. And so what are the top 5 most opened apps on your phone?
I keep my phone as far away from me as possible in life. So I looked into this. I keep the phone over by the front door of my house, so it's rarely with me. The top 5 apps: the message app, my CrossFit app, camera, weather, and the clock. So I use the smartphone for hardly anything.
for phone calls,
for calls
and WADs.
Yeah,
I got
and WADs. Yeah, WADs. Okay,
that's what
I like this.
Anybody. This is funny to me because anybody that is using their phone like that in that way, or I met somebody that wasn't using Strava to track runs. Like, anybody that's sort of aside from that, and they're more like Wendell Berry, like neo-Luddite type of thing. They're like the cool people to me now. I don't You've accomplished something.
I wouldn't say I'm neo-Luddite necessarily, because we're going to be talking about AI.
Yeah.
So I embrace AI, but I do look for balance.
Yeah. And you never just went with a dumb phone.
Oh, I've thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the phones I keep getting in my life, this is too much, but they kind of come to me for free.
Oh.
So, they're passed down, secondhand.
Yeah.
So there's no need for me to buy a dumb phone if I just keep getting free.
Maybe somebody will give you one of those splunked phones eventually. They'll just pass it down. So cool. Man, it's the best.
All right.
Yeah. I look at it probably twice a year, and then I'll never get it.
By that time we'll all be, it'll be hologram calls.
That's right.
By the time I get that.
What's the last book that you read for work or for pleasure?
For pleasure, I just finished last night Cold Victory by Karl Marlantes. It's about espionage in post-World War II Finland.
Oh, wow.
I enjoy his writing very much. That's a fiction book. Nonfiction, I read Sebastian Junger's In My Time of Dying, about his near-death experience and what it means to an atheist like him. I don't really read books for work. I read a lot of nonfiction in other industries, business, entrepreneurship, business biographies, design, the crafts, and see what I can apply to the comms world. But I don't read comms related books ever.
I still have 2 more personal questions, but I knew we would get derailed into these types of things. Tell me more about that. I've had somebody ask me, like, what's the best business book, and I always name fiction books because I think that they're more applicable. Like The Wizard of Oz is an amazing self-help book, right? And putting those things together. Why do you avoid books about, now is it across the board, books about writing and books about communications in the industry and books about content marketing?
I avoid comms books for sure. Communications profession, communications industry. I enjoy reading books about writing, and especially from fiction writers. I take a lot of master classes from nonfiction and fiction writers as well. I think it's because I like to position myself as an insider outsider with Mister Editorial.
Yeah.
Insider being I'm in the trenches, fully employed, I am in the comm space, but I don't want to be influenced by what the zeitgeist or trends are from my peers. I like to see if I can swim against the tide a little bit.
Yeah.
So I just stay out of the comms space, and I just don't want to repeat what maybe too many or others are saying. So
Yeah,
I try and find inspiration elsewhere.
makes sense. What's a common myth about your field of expertise?
If you call my field of expertise storytelling, a common myth is that you can plan it and that you can have a publishing calendar. In my experience, I've spoken with many internal stakeholders outside of the comms function who are, or even comms leaders who are interested in seeing your publishing calendar for the next 3, 6, or 12 months. It's impossible. I think if you can look out and have a solid calendar for 4 weeks, you are excelling. If you've got 2 weeks, you're in a good spot. And that's just because the nature of comms is that something happens unexpected all the time, and it just jumbles the calendar. You can't have too many set pieces because you've got to plan for the unplanned and have that flexibility. So when I share my calendars around, it's usually a 2-week outlook, even though many of them are desperate to see for 4 weeks or 3 months.
Yeah, like
that would be a fantasy world. It's just not reality. As much as I'd like to have a longer term plan, I just got to be a little more agile.
If you could, this is my favorite question. If you could know the answer to one mystery, what would it be?
There are a lot of mysteries in life, so I would like to know if there's an afterlife. Maybe I'm thinking about that because I just read Younger's memoir about near-death experiences and what those people experience on the edge, and it's kind of sci-fi like and kind of eerie and unsettling. There are several mysteries I want to know about, but because I have a sort of a mild fixation with death and dying.
Mild fixation? You and Sam Harris? Yeah, that's mild fixation.
Shaun, you're dropping Sam Harris. You said WAD. You're name checking. We share the same name. Am I talking to myself? Where do you live? And when you come through Oregon, we're going to CrossFit together while listening to the Sam Harris podcast.
Fantastic. Yeah, we can watch me dry heave while listening to Sam Harris.
Which is about the nerdiest thing I might have said all year.
So last time we talked, let's getting into AI, and I'm really excited about this conversation. Like, we have a lot in common on talking about these things, but we also have this in common, being within the communications world, employee experience, editorial writing, things like that. And AI is a big question related to this that can put me into existential mood. Like, I hope we
totally
keep it light-ish when we talk about it, but that's where I end up a lot of the time. And last time you were on the show, you agreed that AI won't replace people, but someone using AI will. Is this still your opinion a year later?
Yes, but now there's an extra qualifier to that, and I feel like we can't have this conversation without being. We just need to accept that for the next however long this conversation lasts, it will be a low burn existential crisis, because I do think it remains that those who use AI will outperform and possibly therefore replace uh, our peers who don't use AI. If you think about the students who are going through the university system now, who may be majoring in communications, they are learning AI. They are going to bring it with them, just like the younger generations are digital native. The forthcoming generations will be AI native.
Yeah.
And so it's coming. So, in that sense, I think it still remains the case. But I also think that the level of productivity will increase for our profession, and therefore hiring for comms pros will plateau quickly.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, within 3 years, the number of within 3 years, new hires in the comms profession will decline
Yeah.
because people are becoming more efficient using AI, and there's no need to hire as many junior staffers.
Yeah.
So it will. I think AI will replace our jobs, just not a one for one. I think it'll just cause a decline
Yeah.
in the number.
If you don't have this came up with the legal fields as well, but if you don't have the junior staffers, um, actually, let me move back up. If you have these, this is going to make me sound like old man curmudgeon a little bit, but if you have these kids coming out of young adults, whatever you want to call them, coming out of colleges that are using AI to do this type of stuff, does this mean that nobody's learning the craft of clear communications or the craft of clear writing? Because one thing I've noticed with AI, at least now, is you still have to know what's good or what's going to be effective, or still make judgment calls on things, or even be able to write a prompt that makes sense as far as clear communication, craft, comms plans, conversations, talking points. If that, what happens if that piece is missing of people learning the craft, or do you see that as like AI will handle that?
I don't know if that's a crisis yet.
Yeah,
For one, there will continue to be people who learn the craft, and I think they will be the writers, historians, journalists who rely on the written word
yeah,
to do their job. Plenty of them will not find work in their fantasy field and will end up in comms. That's the case now. We have
yeah.
a lot
That
of,
is
would
Russian lit
be
majors.
writers
Yeah, yeah,
and, and ex journos in our field. So I don't think it's going to dry up in our field. Are um, are people going to learn the craft though? That's a really good question. Are engineers who have sweated and toiled over learning C++ and
yeah,
JavaScript, are they wondering if the people coming up behind them are losing the skills to craft elegant code? I don't know.
yeah,
But I wonder if that's happening there. I I probably people are going to lose. They probably stop teaching it to a large degree. I saw a card written by a young person who recently graduated high school that was written in print because they're not teaching cursive,
yeah,
and there was no punctuation whatsoever in a 4 sentence card. And so I'm wondering, are they even teaching punctuation and grammar, or are young people, just writing like they text?
yeah,
So if we're not learning cursive and we're not learning basic grammar skills, I can only assume that the
yeah.
craft of writing and storytelling is next on the chopping block.
I wonder, one thing that's come to mind related to this within our profession is I've debated whether or not to punctuate some columns based off
Mm,
of the audience. Like, I had
well,
no idea that people
that's
saw me as angry in my text messages because I use
mm,
periods. Like, I
mm,
did not know that was a thing until
mm,
recently from
mm.
my daughter.
So you're talking about comms between humans, not between employees
Yeah,
who aren't human.
that's right.
Yeah, I can see that. But I only communicate with people around my age, really. And I've learned that if I want to talk to my nephews who are teenagers, they basically ignore me.
So it doesn't matter.
I'm
Like it's
using the wrong app. I'm trying to send them a text message, and they're like, "Why aren't you on Snapchat, Uncle Shaun?" Whatever they're on. So, but if Shaun, if you get so bold as to remove punctuation from internal comms, please let me know.
yeah.
Because that would be something.
I'll give it a shot with one thing and then measure and
Yeah,
then see what
see who
happens.
notices.
I know, like without the syntax. You bring up a good point on the developer front. Because I don't know. Like when I think about if the comms that we're producing using AI is based off of a large language model, so a large data set of where our communication styles of the writers that have all come before, of the journalists, and I don't know, it's pulling from Dickens and Kurt Vonnegut and Margaret Atwood or whatever, and pulling all these things together. If it's based on that point in time, does it stay that point in time as far as how creative we get or how experimental we get? I mean, there's things that happen with, I would say, it's pretty easy to like these days it's become easier to on postmodern literature and some of the things that came out of that. But I also think that it like we communicate based off a lot of the influences that came from that, which were super experimental in how we do things now. Do you think that years from now we'll just kind of be in the I don't know, will we be having conversations like this about where we might push the envelope or try something new or to punctuate or not punctuate our comms that we send out? Or is it going to be um, sort of as is for the foreseeable future? Style, syntax, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, texting has changed the way we communicate. Even in our more professional corporate
Yeah,
communications, we're not afraid to use emoji, for example.
I am.
Are you?
No, I have
I
a
was going
heart.
to say,
I'm not cool
you
with
got to get
it.
over that.
Well, no, I like
Uh,
I'll use it, but it looks as though emoji has become the period. Is that right?
uh,
Like, do you do a period after emoji? I'm really happy to see you emoji, and that's the period that comes after it. So I get it. I get it wrong.
yeah,
Like, do I put the
I
smiley
don't know.
face at the front of it?
Yeah.
Because it starts to feel like those children's books where
So,
it'll show a mountain and then the word mountain, and I'm like, well, I said mountain. Why do I put a picture
mm,
of a mountain in there?
mm-hmm.
I don't know.
You need to have some youth around you to ask like how will this be received? Because I do add punctuation to my emoji uh, text, but it looks funny, but it also looks correct.
Yeah,
I don't know. We will. The thing is about this whole AI thing is it's moving so quickly and evolving so quickly that what we can do now was hardly imaginable a year ago.
yeah,
And so I can't even imagine what it's going to look like next year.
yeah,
I don't know if like generative AI will necessarily be so dramatically different than the capabilities today. It feels
yeah.
like the learning curve is flattening a little bit there.
Do you use it?
But
Yeah, do you use it now, generative AI, in your work?
I use generative. I use ChatGPT and Bing and Copilot daily,
Yeah.
personal and professional.
Okay.
Yeah, all day long.
Yeah. So, do you, it sounds like this move to using AI, generative AI within communications. I mean, there's other things related to AI within comms as far as measuring and single sourcing and creating a bot for people to get answers for things. Um, if this is like, should we be trying to slow this down? Is this something where, or is it just like get on and ride? at this point where we're moving forward?
Uh, okay. If I were a policymaker, a regulator, a tech guru, I may have a different answer. But as a comms professional, I don't know. We should not try slowing this down.
Yeah.
We don't even have any power to do that. Um, here's a couple of things to think about. One is it's all about the money. I remind people that all the time. It's about the money, honey. Um, companies will figure out ways to deploy artificial intelligence to make them more efficient and productive, possibly enable some innovations and breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
Once they figure out that they can use AI tool to replace overhead costs, which HR and comms are, they will, and they will take that money that I would have paid for that headcount and put it towards engineering, product development, and sales,
Yeah.
where that money, those employees have a more direct influence on the bottom line.
Yeah.
So AI is coming, and we don't have any power to slow it down. And here's where I want comms people to take a step back and like examine ourselves.
Yeah.
So when we hear about technology displacing jobs out there in the world, we don't tend to freak out. I think I'm right in generalizing here, but when we hear about technology replacing manufacturing jobs or truck drivers or food service people, we're like, okay, cool. That's civilization advancing. Those people will just be learn new skills and
Yeah.
get jobs elsewhere.
Yeah.
But then when technology comes for our jobs, we adopt this NIMBY attitude, not in my backyard.
Yeah.
Whoa,
Yeah.
what are you doing with technology trying to replace me? Oh, now you know what it's like to feel like a truck driver in the face of auto coming up. So check yourself is one thing I like to say to comms pros.
Yeah.
Why do you get in a tizzy about this and not with other job displacements out there? The second is, isn't it the utopian ideal that technology helps replace dirty work and drudgery so that the human can thrive in other areas, possibly creative or leisure? There's great meaning to be had in work, but I find that a lot of people in our profession are having trouble finding meaning in comms work. Despite what many LinkedIn profiles say about being passionate about comms, I don't think you are, because how many comms people do you know who retire and then continue to do comms in retirement?
Right.
It's not a passion, it's a job that you're really good at. When people retire from comms, they're like, yeah, I'm out of comms. So shouldn't we be thrilled that there is a technology rising to take care of the tedium and the drudgery that can happen in the comms space? Shouldn't we embrace that so that we can live that ideal utopian fantasy?
I would, yeah, I'm all about utopian ideal fantasies. As you were talking, and this isn't an obvious answer. I think, like, sometimes I like to, it's cliche at this point to say AI is going to remove the humanity in some things. I don't think that that's the case. But there's two elements to this on time to the humans, and you suggested the one was, does AI free us up to be more human, not only in our daily lives, which totally makes sense, but I have many questions for you about that. But then in our work lives, ultimately the point of communications, to make sure that people know what's going on, to make sure people are cool with their job and what's happening at a company, to engage other people, to create excitement. Like I like to do a lot of humor and things like that in communications, and sort of push forward I don't know, a goofy employment brand or one that's engaging and things like that. But ultimately, it comes down to this human to human connection. You're using words and managers or whoever else to make that happen. Will AI enable more of that? Because the more trust you have in an organization, the further you're going to go. Do you think that AI can be one of those tools that frees us up to do the more expensive human to human communications, or building trust, or working with other people?
That's what we say, right? Oh, the AI, yeah, let's use AI because that will free me up to do more creative and strategic work. But how
Mm-hmm.
many strategic people do you need on a comms team?
That's true. Yeah.
Like how many strategic projects are there to go around? So I think that will happen for many of us, but comms functions are generally small and there's not a lot of strategy and creative projects and funding to go around for all of them. One thing that's happening in the real world outside of work is that people are investing in experiences, and lots of companies are springing up to provide really interesting in real life experiences. These haunted houses. Netflix is announcing like
What?
television themed, like Stranger Things uh, pop ups. Sporting events, all these things that happen
Yeah.
in real life. More and more people are engaging in these so-called experiential activities. You go to art museums and you're surrounded 360 degrees by Van Gogh's paintings instead of staring at the wall.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
So maybe there could be some creative employee experience that could come out of being displaced by AI. But now we're talking like, is this an HR job? The
Mm-hmm.
employee experience role is some people in comms are engaged in employee experience, and sometimes it's an HR thing.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting question to ask because most of my career has spent in white collar industries,
Mm-hmm.
and it's you just need to be connected on a laptop. I work remotely for my firm. How much can I do for an employee experience
Yeah.
in real life? Not much. Uh, yeah, I don't know, Shaun.
Yeah. Well, no, like,
I don't
okay,
know.
so
What do you think? Can AI free us up for more creative roles?
right. Uh, I think so. But you bring up a very, very, very good point. And I didn't say, will AI free us up to hire lots more people to create experience roles or experiences at work? I don't think I think what you mentioned at the top is that we'll be, I hate the phrase, do more with less. In this case, I think it ends up being do more with more, um, because this will enable us to do more for what we're working on and what we're putting together. If if All right, so fully existential then on this front. I don't have a job anymore, and it could be other people, and not because there's like a new market that you can go to do. Or like, are we? I don't know if it's in our lifetime, but are we rapidly approaching this space where many humans won't have to work? Like, is AI going to take us to the point where we have farming or mining or these different things that, like, where usually it's labor intensive? We have to have people on assembly lines or machine lines, even the blue collar work. I might be able to take my car in, type in what the problem is, and my car goes into like mechanics could be sort of ousted. If that happens, because you brought up do people still do communications when they retire? If you have an entire generation that retires a lot earlier than normal, like, what then? I guess that's what 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 I like to think. Oh, we're just gonna party, but I don't think that that's what will happen. I think,
No, it's not going to happen.
yeah, a lot of people derive their meaning and purpose from their profession or their work.
Yeah, so I don't think technology or AI will cause a sudden social system in which people are just suddenly doing watercolors and poetry 20 hours a week. Because, like you said, we derive meaning from work. And
Yeah.
that's a human trait. And there is no shame in saying that. And so I think people will find something to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exciting. It's like, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to, I don't think that's going to be the case. We're not going to be all walking around in togas playing the harp and living off of universal basic income and saying, aren't the robots great? No, I think we'll be bored out of our minds within a week. And somebody's going to learn how to manufacture harps, and somebody's going to be learn how to do bespoke togas. You know, people will find a way to
Bespoke togas.
Yeah.
Part of me wants to be quiet and just have you keep creating these alternative
right.
versions of the future. So knowing this is really helpful to me because it's within our specific industry. And you said the check yourself with other comms folks. Where, if you had to give advice to somebody, I would say that's been in comms. So not somebody coming up into it, but somebody that's been in comms 15, 20 years. They've been doing this work. Maybe there's a sliver of employee experience in it and these things coming. And here is AI staring at you, staring at your team. What other advice would you give them besides the, hey, check yourself?
If I had 5 years left in my comms career, I probably wouldn't sweat it. I'd say write it out.
Yeah.
Because comms is notoriously slow to adopt new technology for various reasons. Some of it comes to funding. Some of it comes to anxiety around new tech and trying new things.
Yeah.
People just want to write and so on. So I think the people in the late stage of their career have a little bit of time, 5 years max, and then just not sweat it too much.
Yeah.
Those of us who are looking at another 10 to 15 years, it can't be ignored. It can't be ignored. What you can do is apply your 15, 20 years of wisdom to the new technology. And, we live in a world in which we have 3, 4, maybe even 5 generations within the workplace. That's valuable.
Yeah.
So it's not difficult to learn, right? No. You've used this stuff. It's so intuitive. It's so intuitive because you're just chatting with somebody. We're not asking you to do coding. We're not asking you to learn Photoshop, which is impossible. It's just talking in a chat bot.
Yeah.
We do that with customer service agents, bots or human. We already know how to do this. So it's easy enough to learn this. So I think those of us who have 10 to 15 years left in their career can't ignore it. They should embrace it, learn to use it, dial into 1 or 2 tools or use cases and become deeply expert at it immediately. Mm-hmm. Change comms, multimedia, photography, graphics, storytelling, whatever it is, pick 1 or 2 because there's many of them out there, and just get known for it as soon as possible because that expertise will be needed. I was talking with a colleague yesterday who was applying for a role because it was the first time they saw a comms role in which the job description required AI experience.
Oh, wow.
So it's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I hire people, I'm asking them how they use AI.
Yeah. Do you?
And by the way, they're all using it.
Everybody, I know everybody's using it. Do you? What's your evolution been like on writing prompts? And I'm curious, have you gotten more personal? Is the wrong word, maybe, but more like you're actually chatting. Did you start more formal, like? Um, I guess, are you saying please and thank you, or that's cool, or right on, let's try this now? Like, what
I,
does
for,
what do your prompts look like
I
when you
forget to
started to now?
I forget to do that because you do need to teach the system. That was a good result. That was a bad result. Um, so I haven't crossed that threshold yet where I think I'm talking with uh,
Yeah.
an intelligent being. So I keep forgetting to be polite. I'm not angry with it, but I'm not overly polite with it. What? And so really my prompts haven't evolved too much. It's how I use ChatGPT, for example. You can set up these individual threads
Hmm.
that remember the history of your conversation. And so if you open up my personal ChatGPT login page, you'll see one that's marked fitness, one that's marked cooking, one that's marked gardening, one that's marked math.
Yeah.
Uh, one that's it's just these different topics. Whenever I have a gardening question or a recipe question or a fitness question, I go to those individual chat rooms,
Hmm.
and it's like I'm continuing a chat that's been going
Yeah.
on for several weeks. So
Yeah.
that's how I've evolved. It's less about becoming better at the prompting and
Yeah.
just more efficient at using the history of my conversation with the tool.
Yeah. Yeah. I've tried. I've started playing around with you do a lot of ghostwriting for executives. I started playing around with trying to create the voice for individual executives. So when I open up that, because it again learns from the history, like as you dial it in, and then you go in, type in the details of whatever it is you need to communicate, like whether it's sensitive, not sensitive, be direct, be not, like, um, and then having it kick out in the voice of that executive that you're working with. Like, they like to use these words. This is the way they like to sign off. They like to sound, you know, that's been really interesting. Like
I think
trying to
it
get that down.
I don't know if anybody's going to take anything away from this conversation, but if they do, that's the one thing that they should take away. That's the one of the best hacks for using these tools is to teach
Yeah.
it to write in certain voices, and again to have separate threads for those voices. You know, a thread for your CFO, a thread for your CEO, a thread for the head of HR. They all speak differently. They have different
Yeah. Yeah.
voices and styles. And
Yeah.
man, if you could get those bots to be like dialed in on that, oh man, you're saving hours of time.
I know. Well, and then they don't know. I've worked too many places where they know it's coming from me, anyways. So the CEO writes it, and some of them are serious emails. Like we're doing a reduction, a layoff. We're doing a layoff, and then we write the email, and then I get notes about how great the email was, because it can be time consuming, difficult to try to get it into that voice instead of whatever your voice is, or however direct you go with it moving forward. Well, what other ways besides generative AI do you think communication professionals should be embracing or looking at
Uh, that's a good question because my expertise is in storytelling,
AI? Hmm.
content creation. That's where I'm most proficient at it.
Yeah.
I'm not using AI for image generation, for example. I'll use it maybe to illustrate it, but whatever it spits out, I'm like, yeah, that's good enough.
That's
Because,
that's good. That's
yeah,
good enough.
I think teaching people how to use AI will be a useful skill.
Yeah.
And so if you can be that peer for your comms peers and for your workplace,
Yeah.
if you can if you learn the basics and get them down pat, you can teach that to everybody else because everybody just needs the basics.
Hmm.
Nobody needs to really go deep on AI technology. Very quickly, it'll be super intuitive and user friendly. and it will just require inputs and prompts to different apps and agents. I think if you learn to be proficient at prompting for various tasks and needs, and for your own output, I honestly think that's good enough.
Yeah.
Right now in comms, I think that'll get you through the next 3 years. Honestly.
Yeah. Well, where else? Where can people follow you? Where can people connect with you? You have a
Yep.
Substack that you publish.
Substack. That's the best place to find me. Mister Editorial. Google it. You'll find it. I'm on LinkedIn, but only on Fridays, so it's not really good. Honestly, I only go to LinkedIn on Friday, and so if you send me a message on Tuesday, I'm not going to get it for a few days. But I'm there. I'm there.
Yeah, I know that you're serious when you said it, but it's still hilarious. It's like something I would say just to say I'm never on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I checked it this morning. I'm done.
Yeah, I did my LinkedIn duty for the week. Well, Shaun, it's been a pleasure. Thanks. Gave me a lot to think about, and I'm sure gave our listeners a lot to think about moving forward while we figure out.
I hope so. I think, the one thing I like to remind people in my Substack is comms is just a job, and AI is a tool to help you do that job. Don't freak out about what's happening at work on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis. Get your priorities straight. But as far as this conversation goes, you cannot ignore AI because it is coming for our profession.
Yep.
So get your head on straight about that, and then close your laptop at 5:00.
Yeah, that makes I couldn't agree more. And hide your phone by the front door.
Definitely.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Shaun. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.